My name is Paul Tweel, and I have belonged to this church all my life, and I attended at an early age. I was in the youth choir and also an altar boy. And there's one thing about being in that era, if you didn't attend, if you happen to miss any. If you happened to miss a choir or Sunday school, you were approached by the minister of the church, and he gave you a good scolding. Changes that I kind of experienced over the years, the way things were back then. Families all went to the church and church functions and whatnot, attended on a regular basis. But as we grow older, families move on, and siblings, whatever, and they don't seem to have the same interest in the church life because there's too many outside activities going on, and that takes away from the congregation, which is kind of diminishing over these years. And I think most churches are finding this as we go on. Yes, I attend the 8 o'clock service. It's just a shorter service, but I like getting up early in the morning that way. And it's about less than a 45-minute service, but there's no music and nothing. It's just a service with the prayers, and we take up communion. And that's my attendance there. But a lot of people may go on the mid-morning where they go as a family and stay afterwards for coffee and tea, whatever, for a little get-together with the other members of the church. In the 8 o'clock service there, you speak to a few people that are at that service anyway. You talk to them, but I don't go to the mid-morning service. I used to years ago, but over the years, your habits change and your tastes change, whatever. But no, I just go in and do my service. Well, I hope for the church's sake that people do still attend the church services and continue on. I see over the years through the country where different churches have folded up, and the attendance in the community, people move to the bigger cities, so the attendance are less in those areas. So, and the churches can't operate that way, and then in some areas churches minister goes to 2 or 3 different areas for church services. You know, they got together that way, and that's the only way they can survive. I hope for the church's sake everything continues on the same.
It seemed to me I was 3 feet off the floor when I was in that church. And every time I go there, I get the same feeling, you know. Well, I was part of the church in Oshawa. I played for St. George's Anglican Church. And before that, when I was at University of Toronto, I played at a Presbyterian church in Toronto. My wife and I and 4 daughters came to this parish, just as congregation. But then the parish priest or Archdeacon Tanton said, well, I would like you to play the organ and lead the choir. I said, but you've already got an organist and choir leader. And he said, so he just said nothing. One day he phoned me up and said, please come over at the house. I have some people I want you to meet. So I came over to the rectory right there. And he said, showed me a letter that the present organist had put in his retirement. And so now, would you take the job? I said, yes. And he said, well, how about, we can't really pay very much. And he wasn't lying. They didn't, but that's all right. There's a good choir that, and the musical tradition had already been established, well, now it's 150 years. So I prepare very well. I have to practice every day, and I insisted that I get the hymns for Sunday on the earlier Monday. So I'd have them all ready to work with the choir at choir rehearsal on Wednesday night. So it was, the music doesn't stop from the first of the service through to the sermon. That's when it stops. And then after the sermon, it starts again and goes to the end. And so we try to make it continuous. And that's what I like. In fact, the Mass is the longest playing drama in the world. It was a good job. It was very good. You had to keep busy. It was a 7-day a week. So I had a boys' choir which practiced 3 times a week, Thursdays, Saturdays, and early Sunday morning. They were very good. I had a girls' choir that also rehearsed on Thursday, and and they sang every Sunday. It just wasn't periodically that they sang, and the boys sang every Sunday as well. So that was interesting, very interesting. Particularly, dealing with boys who can find funny things in the music that they were singing, and you had to say, "Oh, look, forget that. Don't start giggling in church," During Holy Week, the week before Easter, where, the organ is turned off, it's not used, and the choir sings a cappella, it's without accompaniment, and the congregation sings, and they do it very well. So the singing is very important to this parish. In fact, there are old bulletins, and they sang good hymns, powerful hymns, and settings of the communion service or the Mass are wonderful. And they still are. In fact, there's some of them that are dog-eared copies, and they're still used today. I know this parish, St. Peter's, we have something that every Easter we take up a special collection for St. Monica's home in Jamaica. And it's a home for girls who have lost parents and have been kicked out of the house or anything like that. Because I've not been associated with any other community here in PEI. But this community is very supportive. And when my first wife died, she died of cancer. And do you know that it was for a week and a half we didn't have to prepare a meal at the house because these people in this parish helped and gave us food to eat. That's the kind of thing. There's a small congregation, but they built, 10 years, they built this parish hall, $1 million. They spent a lot of money, and they gave a lot of money for this. There's that feeling of companionship, and I think that's important. See, I didn't change much either. I carried on just the way they did when it was 1869. you know. I carried on the musical tradition. My student is playing the organ, a student that I taught, got her degree at UPEI, and a very good friend who was the cantor took on to lead the choir. And the people who are doing it now have carried on what I did, and it's quite gratifying. So I have no problem sitting in the congregation and singing. I think, or some people think I sing too loud, but God is very important in the life of any musician.
My name is Peggy Williams. I grew up in Summerside, Prince Edward Island, but for 57 years I've been in Charlottetown and part of St. Peter's Cathedral. When I came to Summerside, it was only for 1 year. My dad had accepted a position in South America. That was 1943, and the family was never again reunited because of a number of things. And I was totally bereft without my father. I had a rocker. There was a rocker in my grandmother's kitchen, and I sat there and I rocked and I droned and I rocked for months. And one day, but the church was right around the corner from my house, so I just walked to church for 8 o'clock every Sunday morning. And one Sunday morning, it dawned on me that the Father I was learning about in church would never leave me. And I think that was the biggest seed, you know. When I came to St. Peter's in 1961, I knew that I would probably be very happy at this church, but I had no idea of what it was going to mean and what its sense of worship was going to do for me personally. The Book of Common Prayer is used exclusively in St. Peter's Cathedral, and it was compiled by Bishop Cranmer at the height of the beauty of the English language. We know that now in hindsight. And what that means for a worshiper is that the words flow and they are memorable. And when you're at my age and not even remembering what you're going into a room for, but there are still crises in the life of someone my age, and those words just flow through my head, sometimes disjointed, sometimes amazingly intact. Great care is taken of the worship, the music, the preaching. Our preachers usually stay for a very long time, and the rectors without fail have been wonderful teachers. Our present rector is kind enough to print sermons, so people like me who are deaf can follow along while he's preaching. And there's a double bonus in that. I get to take the sermon home, and there's so much more in these sermons than one single hearing would give you. I cherish them. We have outstanding stained glass windows, many of which were created in England. There is one in the chapel from the William Morris studio, and they're beautiful. A few years ago, we collected beer bottles and pop bottles and made fudge in order to repair the stained glass windows. And we got to them just in time. The life of lead is 100 years, And the lead in those windows had served us well past then by the time we were able to have the windows re-leaded. Their beauty is, it's just part of the whole atmosphere. Maybe still, the chapel has been said to have been the best kept secret in Charlottetown. We really want to do everything we can to change that. We're really its custodians. It is for all people. And it falls to us to keep it in repair, which is very costly, and to preserve it as the best we can. Heritage Canada has been involved in our chapel. They don't fund things like that, but their expertise on all subjects related is available to us. And we have used that expertise and shall continue to do so. It's quiet in there. We've often given talks there for people. But when the chapel is full of people listening to someone speak, they don't see the real chapel. There's something mystical about it. We have portraits on our walls by Robert Harris. He's famous for painting the Fathers of Confederation from the first meeting that took place in Charlottetown. He's an acclaimed portrait artist. And those paintings, my children once said, "Mom, they're all dead." So I pointed to some pictures in our home. We have pictures of people whom we love, who've had a great effect on us. They happen to also be dead to this world, but we venerate them. Their pictures continue to give us strength, because the walls whisper. When you hear those words over, I'm 84, so when you hear those words all your life, they are ready for you to use when you need them. But not only that, St. Peter's is a family, very much a family. And in one of my situations, they were very much aware of what my family was going through. And their prayers and their encouragement and their faithfulness to me was just, you just couldn't put a value on it. It's all so nourishing, you know. I thought I knew my faith when I came here in 1961. I really didn't. And that's why I say the summer of my faith began when I walked through those doors. We're in it for the long term, and we're on a journey. Our destination is not on this plane. And I've had enough miracles in my life to ask for them.
2019 marks the 150th anniversary of St. Peter's Cathedral in Charlottetown. Hugh Simpson started attending the church before he can even remember. In fact, Simpson was baptized here.
I lived next door to the cathedral in what is now the church office. That's where I was living at that time.
Simpson's grandfather was one of the early reverends of the church, but he says it was another one, Canon E.M. Malone, who had the most influence on him.
Well, it had considerable effect on my life, I think, particularly because of Canon Malone, who was the incumbent at that time, and he was very influential, I think, on most everybody he came in touch with.
He grew up next door and even attended the church school until he was in grade 3.
I did my first 3 grades of school at the St. Peter's Church School, which was still operating at that time. But so I was in there every day during the school year. Yes, I spent a lot of time in and around the church.
Simpson joined the church choir when he was quite young.
I think I was in the choir before I could actually read, I think. I don't have any real recollection of that. Singing was certainly never one of my strong points.
Simpson is now 90 and can no longer attend masses due to health problems. But he does attend chapel at Andrew's Lodge, where he lives in Stratford. Simpson attended the church with his wife Norma until she passed away in 2005. The couple has 6 adult children. Over the next 150 years, the cathedral hopes to continue influencing young children, just like Hugh Simpson almost a century ago.
I come here because when I leave, I feel renewed. Yeah. And it's always been that way for me. I started coming here when I was 4 years old, and I'm 85 now, so that's a long time. And it still means as much. In fact, it means more to me now than it did then, because I didn't really understand much of it when you're that young. Over the years, you learn. People don't have the faith they used to have. I don't know why. They seem to have lost faith, I think, over the years because of the wars, the famine, all these wars in all these other countries. I think they kind of lost faith. If you don't have faith, what are you going to believe in? What's going to help you through the hard times? You have to have faith in something. So, what's better than God? I did lose my faith for a little while. That was after my son passed away. And it took me a couple of months, maybe 3 months, to come back because I just couldn't live without my church. Oh, it's hard to say how it helped. It just did. I'd come and I'd feel so much better when I'd leave, when it was over. And it didn't matter to me how long the service was. Some people complain it's too long, but I don't care. To me, it doesn't matter how long it is. It's the only time you get to come here, mostly, is on Sundays. I mean, I could have gone a lot of different ways, but I didn't stray. I didn't stray. My father passed away in 1974, Elias Kays. And my brother, who was the sacristan here, Paul, he had that ordered, that Jesus up there, to commemorate my father in memory of him. Oh, I remember his big booming voice. And I remember when some of my brothers and their friends would come on Sunday afternoons to play poker. And my mom she was sneaky sometimes. When she wanted them to go home for supper, she'd go to the front door and open it, and she'd say, "Oh, hello, Ken and Malone. Come on in." And every one of the boys would be scrambling to hide the money and hide the cards. And then they'd all leave. Yeah, my mom was pretty cute. She came here all the time too. That's a long time ago when Canon Malone was here. We were in Sunday school, and he must have been 7 or 8, and he'd always be chewing gum in Sunday school. So Canon Malone come after him one day, and he said, "Angel Gabriel, you put that gum behind your ear, I'm going to hang you out the window and let you fly." So that was my brother Gabriel. Marge Vesey and I were in the choir. I was around 15 or 16, I guess. And the two of us were in the choir, and I had several cousins in the choir at the same time. Oh, it was just like a family, and still like a family, all of us. I've always loved to sing, and it gave me a chance to sing to my heart's content. In those days, we had about 200 kids in Sunday school. It's very far from that now. There's only a few kids in Sunday school these days. Yes, it's very sad. Church is never more than half full, if that. And when people go away, they always come back. And if they come for a holiday, they're always here. They always come in for the service, because they want everyone of any nationality that wants to come to church. Now it's not even half filled. It's really sad that people have stopped coming to church simply because they can't spare that hour. They're all too busy. It's like that old saying, you got to slow down, smell the roses. Or the coffee, whichever. I was raised in this church. It's like my second home. I would never think of going somewhere else.
I was baptized here, confirmed here, married here, baby baptized here. Our son confirmed here, and my husband and I both sang in the choir, and my son was an altar boy. Every Sunday morning, held at that time in the hall, and there were no formal classrooms. We sat on benches around the hall, and one class was divided from the other by the back of the bench. I've been here for everything. Let me see, favorite memories of the cathedral. Well, being in the choir. I came into the choir when I was 15 years old under Bunny McNutt, who is a famous organist and choir master in Canada. So I was 15 when I came in. After Bunny McNutt, there was a pair. Sue Brenton was the organist, and Gwen Patterson was the director. And then Gwen finished first, and when Sue was completed her run, Alan Reeser took over. So Alan was the third choir director that I sang under. And I was 64 years in the choir, so it was wonderful. I've sung with the best and for the best. Some of the communion hymns are lovely, lovely, yeah. I couldn't name you a favorite one. I knew them all. And even though I'm not in the choir now, I remember the harmony to them. So I don't sing the words because I can't read them, but I sing the harmony, the la, 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 every Sunday. What I was thinking about lately was during Lent, there were regular services held in the chapel every Friday afternoon for young people. And some of the girls from my school, Prince Street School, would walk down with me on a Friday afternoon and attend those services during Lent That was really lovely. Young people did not take communion at the 11 a.m. service. It was only the elderly and the frail. And that went on for a long time. I believe I was in the choir before that changed. So that would be after 1945. There was still no young people taking communion at the big 11 a.m. service. We had to arrange to go to an early morning service in the chapel some other Sunday of the month. That was quite a big change. We are so few right now, and things seem to get more expensive to maintain. Oh, I hope we will be. Yes, I hope we will be. It's a very faithful group here, valiant and faithful. It's just a way of life to lead you through life. That's all. The older you get, the more you realize that. But they'd have to be prepared to work hard and to want this kind of a service. Like our liturgy and our rituals are just so beautiful, and probably everybody doesn't like that. I do very much because I was born into it. But yes, I would recommend this, and I have recommended this church. And if I meet strangers and they're asking about what goes on in Charlottetown, I always mention St. Peter's Cathedral and show them from the boardwalk where it is. Yeah, I do that.